You know, today's quick discussion in Vblog. First off, I really do not like fucking illegals infested LA, so continue on. Stopped by the Japanese store and picked up a little electronic, looked okay, and someone said it won't work with a Mac, so I plugged into the Mac, works fine. But yes, I will admit there's USB 2.0, so if you don't need performance like this mouse here, then you have a 3.0 port, which I'm actually kind of surprised. It's probably Gen 1, Gen 2, but it don't really matter because it actually works on this phone. You can actually kind of see it actually moves the mouse on it, which is actually pretty cool, I think. But then again, if you know how to build an op sys from ground up, yes, great. Second thing I would like to cover is that I just spent 48 hours working on some crazy projects, and I blew through 6 million tokens of XAIs, and I've had some problems doing that. The first time I was introduced to before Grok Build was launched this month, it was OpenAI and all these, and then they have cloud code. And I've seen some people who are already doing vibe coding, so I figured I'd try it out. And during the last LAFC fair, I was showing it to the other guy, but he wasn't too impressed because the code didn't work right. But then again, I'm still new to how to describe. It's called contexting. And contexting is like me verbally describing you something over the phone. Hopefully you can imagine what I'm seeing. And that could also differ on what your IQ is. Why I chose Grok 4.3 is because at the time that was the only available one. Yes, it makes mistake, but we call that hallucinating. It's like I can show you a screenshot of some PowerShell code. And PowerShell for me is the hardest language for me to learn, but then again, they use what they call the for each loop function or recursion functions you create. You can get pretty deep on recursions, but it just depends. Every language has a way of doing looping, conditions, all of that stuff. You can say if, then, and else. That's called a condition. You can have a directive condition. You can have a multi-condition, case, 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 case. You can have a growing conditions, and then it gets slower after that, and that's when it depends on clock cycle, performance, and all that stuff. But you can design the code agnostically, so you don't really run into those problems. So what I figured off is give Grok a really good task, and I talked to a friend of mine that gave me an SLS. In case you don't know, SLS cameras were common 10 years ago in the ghost hunting community, made a lot of debut, and also gave new life to the old Xbox 360 cams. They were Gen 1, Gen 2. Gen 1 was around 2012 range where you're waving your hands and weeing about and all that fun stuff. So that was almost 10 years ago. And Gen 1 hardware, which is still floating around. Gen 2, you can get it for 10 bucks sometimes on eBay. Some people are selling it higher because they were converted into SLS cams. And what that really is in a nutshell, an SLS or XLS, which is sometimes known, I'm going to do more research on XLS. But the goal of the game is that these cameras fire off a grid, these little laser grid. You'll see it on the infrared camera, little dots. And each dots are high-speed scanning. I don't know how fast they do it, but they're enough to achieve a 15 to 30 frames per second scanning rate. But the idea is that those dots are creating what they call and maybe I get this wrong. It uses IR light, but bounces off of it and figures out the distance between the camera. Radio telemetry. I don't know, maybe I'm using the wrong word for that. But the idea is figuring out the distance and it's giving it a number. Let's say a number 0 is up front, 100 is 3 meters away. Whatever those numbers are, don't matter because we don't have a thing called a LiDAR, but it is a LiDAR. It's a form of a LiDAR. It just uses scanning dots. And each one of those dots, depending on how many dots they scan on the projector, equals the number of pixel, and then we map it out and we can say that 0 is the color blue and it's a warmer color at 100. We can make this map to any color we want depending on how depth. We call that bit depth. It could be 0 to 255, 0 to 1024 is 10 bits, and so on. The bigger bits, the more higher the resolution you can get between the two, but the more information the processor has processed. If you look hard enough, you'll find a thing called prime. Prime is, I believe, the number, and that was the patent that was sold to Apple sometime in 2018, if I remember. I'd correct me if I'm wrong, but that started including that tech on the Apple phones, which is why they had really good images in the last like 5-7 years because they're able to figure out how far objects are and get the best photo without you having to be a professional photographer. In other words, rule of the thirds, depth of field, f-stops. I took photography. I know enough, but I know there are professional ones in the more modern era. So, but I can understand it. So when you take a little bit of things and just because you take it, you didn't really waste time. You trained your brain, your neurons, in order to recognize that voltage. Now, don't get me wrong, I used to be an ace at doing multidimensional calculus, but now I think I'm going to stop at basic algebra. Some stuff I don't even remember anymore, but then again, I shouldn't really say that because I'm sure if I take a crash course, I'll be able to pick it up. But I knew people that were in their 40s when I was in my 20s in college doing electronics, and they were taking a crash course, and they were just annoyed that we were still using an analog oscilloscope when we should be using DSOs or digitizing scopes. I only learned about those because in the last 10 years, thanks to open source and how FPGAs work, that's another technology used to take information that's scanned in. And you just think about it this way: the faster you can take pictures, the more finer of a signal you can see. The dip resolution's how high, you can scale it down in the analog world. The frame rate per second is like your HD. The higher the frame, the more fluid motion it is. We call that Nyquist rate in the technical world, but Nyquist rate only gets in the way when you watch a car commercial with the wheel spinning backwards because it didn't sample fast enough. But then again, most videos are only to about 30 frames a second, so you really don't need to see that. But yeah, that's pretty much what the industry went from analog scopes, where it's just voltages and currents, to deflect the needle, if you want to call it, but it happened to be a beam on the screen, kind of like your old TVs were when they were scanning. You just didn't notice it because it was doing 15 frames a second, so your eyes just pieces it together as a moving image. But at the same time, it's like same thing with oscilloscope. You had deflection, which is usually voltage, and scanning is usually a time base, some sort of voltage generator that goes like that. So it just does that. And I remember Radio Shack used to have schematics how to build this. And I always never thought, why would I need it? But at the same time, I had spare time, build it, and then I didn't even know how to visualize other than hook up an LED and see it glow and shut off, glow and shut off, stuff like that. But you didn't know how that worked. So when you get into scopes, everyone says buy the more expensive equipment. Well, that was because it was a price tag barrier, and no one had that big budget back in 2010 era. So we just clobbered together, and by 2016, a good amount of fun Kickstarter folks was able to piece money together, and I put in probably about 1,000 for Smart Scope. And it was a pretty fun piece of tech. Mine broke, but I took it apart, and it was there. One of those voltage. I think they use what they call a latching relay, and it's really odd because I never saw one in that style. I always thought you had to have like voltage one way or the other way to move the piston and latch it. But this one was a snap on, snap off. It's a pulse. So as long as your pulse is greater than some certain amount of time, it will kind of like pushing that button, push and lock in and push and lock off. So it had all these different modes it switched. One of them, I guess, must have got hit when I traveled to Florida with it one time, but I took it apart and reflowed it and it seemed to come back to life. So I guess it works. It was like channel two. But yeah, Smart Scope at the time was a scope before you could get Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and USB enabled oscilloscopes. So they created one that ran on that platform, and they merged the FPGA community, which is normally reserved for people with signal processing skills, to the what do you call it? I can't remember the name of it, but they use a memory that reads from the ADC. That's what it's called, analog digital converter. And then that's where I learned about, wait a minute, this tech isn't really $10,000, is it? I go, yeah, but it requires a team of engineers who are being paid six-figure income to create that machine to work, the scope. And I thought it was very thoughtful for open source community to create something for everyone. And then shortly after that, we have all of these DSOs pop up all over the market. You could buy a 50 megahertz scope, 50 for $300. Heck, my pool toys cost more than that, believe it or not, especially the custom stuff I play with. So I'm at this point now where I'm at a breaking point that, you know what, I might do one last nice thing. I have one last run in the community I'll probably sell. I got a few quotes here and there, but I'm going to probably put an announcement out once I get the goods coming in next month, hopefully from my vendor, I should say, not S, because there are vendors that want to work with me, but the problem is their price is so high because they know I could actually negotiate costing with them, maybe get more out of the deal, package art, add more value to the product, make it sellable. I can sell it on stuff. But see, that's the job of an entrepreneur. The job of the entrepreneur is to take that risk because you could double your income the next year or you can lose all of it the next year. Say you have a higher risk, and because of this, you get a tax advantage. When you get a tax advantage, you can say, well, I didn't make any money, I end up losing money. So you get tax advantages. Why tax? I didn't make any money, I lost it all. Or you did make money, then you got to pay for the profits. And then you got to get their share. But at the same time, you can go back and forth and figure all this out and figure, is it worth doing this? See, that's the thing that I run into people seem to not see, is that I always need to make more money. I need to put more time in. I did that route, by the way. I used to work 3 jobs, so I know to put more time in. But at the same time, someone complained, you charge too much. So I lower the price down. And then it's like, oh, we'll take you out to lunch instead because it's so cheap. I says, either way, it's the value of the goods and service. And I took it for granted because I had a good family that kept everything like, you don't need to worry about that. Well, it's not that I don't worry about it. I need to understand how it works. It's like math. You don't understand how it works. You can't make those educated predictions. Then everything becomes a conspiracy and you don't have numbers to show. And I hate to bring this up, but yes, when Elon went to the border and filmed it live on his X platform, the whole world was watching. They didn't want to believe the smartest man in the world is can't be outsmarted about what's going on. And I'll finish up tonight's blog with the smartest man in the world, Elon Musk, could not even fix the government. And if the smartest man can't fix the government, like he says, you got to gut it all out, start fresh, and just build it up from there the correct way. And apparently, no one wants to do that because, like I said, when you're cheating a system, you want that to last the longest time. And I'm always aware of myself losing a job in the future. So I'm always prepared for plan B. Boss says, you don't need to work, we'll pay you more. I says, yeah, that might be the case, but I'm still going to work on other projects. I might go and do side work with a friend of mine. I might partner with another artist to try to see if I can launch stores and products, at least in the last decade of his life. So he has someone that's still willing to take his stuff to the big worldwide market like I did. I mean, I did meet the dream. I made Flying Dragon. So, but because the fact that I have my own stuff going on, I'm trying to be my own variant, but more of the Fu Manchu guy. Yeah, you can call me, make fun of the Asians. Does not affect me. Heck, I love it. I mean, one guy I met, his nickname is Mushu. He does PRT shows. I've been on their show a few times to say hi, and I love to chat more, but time to go. My first 15 minutes of this recording is up.